Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Edge of Adventure. My name is Adam Asher. Always great to have you with us. And today, great to introduce you to Patrick Plonsky, who is joining us from Books for Africa. Patrick, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here. Looking forward to visiting.
Yeah, great to get to know you and this fantastic organization that has been uh, shipping books to Africa for how many years now?
33 years.
33 years. And let's go through a couple of the numbers here to paint the picture for people. You have delivered books to how many of the 55 African countries?
All of them. Every single one.
Total number of books would be approximately what by this point in time?
Well, we just crossed the 51 million mark, so we're excited about that. Had a big party last year when we sent our 50 millionth book, but it's the numbers always go up because that's how we measure success. So we're at 51 million sent.
So you've been with the organization 18 plus years. So I'm going to say it's fair to say you know a thing or two about this great organization. What's the heart and soul of it? What's the point? If you were to boil it right down, why are we doing this? Books for Africa.
Well, the reason we do this is because incredibly there's a shortage of books in Africa, and English is widely spoken in Africa. So that means that what we have here in terms of surplus books are very valuable in Africa. So it's a way to add value. What we have is we can provide, and it's quite simple. The concept is simple. The execution and the logistics are quite complex. It's a global operation, of course, but the simplicity of the mission, I think, is what sells it, and it's what keeps us focused. Our goal is to flood the African continent with large quantities of high quality books. And that's the assumption. We don't want to flood the African continent with junk or books that are useless. We want things that are useful here in the US, but people are not using anymore, or are surplus for their needs for whatever purpose.
And how are those collected around the US? So with those, and are they collected outside the US?
Yeah, books are collected all over the world. We run a warehouse in St. Paul, Minnesota, a smaller warehouse. We run a large warehouse in Atlanta, Georgia, that's larger than a football field. And books come in by shopping bag and by semi trailer. I love it when people drop off books by a few boxes or shopping bags, but we're going to send 3.2 million books in the next 12 months. So we need the semi trailer loads. And so that's how we get them, by establishing relationships. We also collect books and send books out of warehouses all over the globe. So a few of the places would include Paris, France, Montreal, Canada, London, England, Annapolis, Maryland, Los Angeles, California, and York, Pennsylvania, just to name a few. So all of the books don't need to go out of our warehouses. We work with publishers and book partners, and so the books leave from a lot of different locations. Sometimes they're custom printed in Hong Kong on occasion, but most of them leave. 75% leave from Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the end result, and we'll come back to some of the logistics because I've got a couple other questions about that. But what's the end result when you take a book from some other place, whether in the US or around the world in some location, and you get it into the hands of someone who really knows how to treasure such a thing because there's there's a scarcity of those things. They don't have the amount of books that maybe we do or we're used to. What's Does that make a big difference in the life of that person?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's all about opportunity. It's all about giving people what they want, and it's all about the diversity of humankind. We're interested in different things. And so, for school purposes, having algebra books, let's say, or medical books, for doctors and things like that, we need a lot of those. But I think the purpose of a library really is to provide vast quantities of knowledge so that whatever you're interested in is there. So, for example, when I was a kid growing up, I was interested in Greek mythology and I lived in a farm in rural Minnesota. There weren't a lot of us interested in Greek mythology, but I was. And so I would walk from recess at my school to this little library where there were some books on Greek mythology, and I read those. Well, I think it's the same thing when you think of libraries across Africa. Different people are interested in different things, and our goal is to provide a lot of variety so that whatever people are interested in reading, we have them in the library. For example, we just sent a container to Malawi. Many of your listeners may be familiar with the book and the Netflix film, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, about a boy in rural Malawi who didn't have money to go to school, but was interested in wind power. So he went to the local library, discovered how to create electricity through wind power, and powered his home with the electricity for lights and then the village, and then it went on from there. So that's an example. Not a lot of people in that village interested in wind power generating electricity. He was. The books got to him, and that's just one example of a person's personal journey and helping him fulfill his potential.
Patrick Plonsky is my guest today here on the Edge of Adventure. He's joining us from Books for Africa, and you can look him up at booksforafrica.org, booksforafrica.org to find out more, and also to find out how you can get involved. What are a couple of the easy ways for someone, a listener, to help out, to come alongside Books for Africa and help you guys make a difference?
Sure. Well, the easiest way is to send funds. 50 cents sends a book to Africa. And so we get donations in all sizes. Some are quite large. Sometimes it's $1 in an envelope. We're one of the few organizations that can do something with $1. We can send 2 books to Africa with $1. So every donation is important to us. But we need books. Book drives by folks in their community are very helpful to us, getting a lot of variety of books, getting large quantities of things like algebra books that we need. And so people can collect books, people can send money, people can organize shipments. We work with a lot of members of the African diaspora who have connections in African countries. They're the ones that line up those shipments so that we're getting books to the right people. And that's what it's all about. And if you live in Atlanta, we are always looking for volunteers. About 15,000 volunteers annually sort our books in the Atlanta warehouse. And we also have sorting going on in Minnesota. So lots of ways to be involved. I guess the final way to be involved is just connections, introductions to the right people that will help us to fulfill our mission. And the right people might be people who have funds or have books or have connections in a wide variety of ways.
Patrick, we live in a very digital age where we have grown accustomed to saying things like, I'm going to email it to you or check it out online and all of that. And that's all wonderful. But when it comes to taking a book and taking it from someplace in the United States and getting it into the hands of a child or a library or a school or something in a rural African location, you're taking that's a lot of, I guess, tactical questions that have to be thought about. How do you get the books, as you said, the right books to the right places? But that does have to be a somewhat expensive endeavor. You're moving a lot of ultimately heavy material from one part of the world to another.
Absolutely. It's a tremendous logistical hurdle, if I can use that word. And it's a global operation and it requires resources on a global scale. So we just wrapped up our fiscal year at the end of June, and we sent about 3.1 million books, and we raised about over $3 million to send those books. So it, from all over the globe, and so it does require logistics. We work with freight forwarders. We work with truckers. We work with anyone who will work with us to achieve these goals. And fortunately, the digital age has allowed us to stay in contact with our recipients in Africa. Internet is more pervasive, so we can email our partners. We can run a leaner operation because we can outsource things like freight forwarding or whatever database. We can tap into pooled resources the same as everyone else, like let's say the Salesforce data platform. So we don't need to create our own. It allows us to outsource in a lot of ways, allows us to stay in touch around the world. And the last thing I'd say about digital is we do send digital books. We sent over 600,000 digital books loaded onto laptops, desktops, and e-readers over the last 12 months. So we want to give people whatever they want. And if that's a digital book, we'll do it. But really where we add value is hard copy books, and that's really what our recipients want. So we send a lot of those.
Patrick Plonsky is joining me today here on the Edge of Adventure from Books for Africa. And you can look them up online, very easy to find, all across social media, but also booksforafrica.org. Booksforafrica.org. What drew you to this, Patrick? I'm sure there's any number of things with your skills and your know-how, any number of things you could be doing, but you've been involved here for quite a while. There's something about this that you love. Tell me about that.
I really started at Books for Africa not as an African expert. I came in as a management professional. I'd been running a nonprofit at the University of Minnesota, and I was working on a degree in international education. A lot of my focus was in Europe and agriculture. I had actually lived for a year in communist Poland. I was very interested in European Union enlargement, the economics of that. But my interests were and remain global, including Africa. And this opportunity presented itself. And interestingly, I applied for the job and then went on a project that I had funded in Europe. And that project was happened to be in Budapest, Hungary, and exploring Hungary joining the European Union along with 9 other countries in those years. That was 2002. And so I sent in my application and went off to Europe. And lo and behold, while I was there in Budapest, received word that Books for Africa was interested in my application. I didn't think they would be because I knew it was a very desirable position. They have a lot of applicants, and they did. But it all worked out for me. And I think at the end of the day, the lesson is if you're interested in something, pursue it. And if you have skills to add, make your pitch. And so I presented my skills to the board, and they hired me. And I thought it would be a relatively short stay, a few years, and then on to the next thing. But I found it so exciting that I can't find anything else that I'd rather do. And so I've been here 18 plus years, and I serve at the pleasure of the board. And so I always tell myself that I have to deliver, or else they'll find someone else who will. And so we've been able to deliver over 51 million books.
Patrick, you said you didn't start out as an expert on Africa. Do you consider yourself an expert now after 18 plus years? I know that Africa is a very varied, very diverse place. It's a large place. We're talking about a lot of different types of geography, a lot of different types of people and cultures and languages represented. What would you, if someone isn't familiar with Africa, how would you uh, help them get to know the continent?
Well, about the time you think you're an expert on something like Africa, you will be humbled because there's so much to learn, and there's so many people more knowledgeable than me about it. So I've been around the African continent. I know some things. I I don't know if I'd even call myself an expert. I'm probably more an expert on shipping books to Africa than I am an African expert. And so it's about bringing skills to the table to achieve your goal. I think part of the lesson here, though, is that I don't need to be an expert about Africa because the recipients of the books in all the 55 countries we send to, they are the experts in their areas. They're the experts on distributing those books. And we have a very good board of directors, about half of which are African diaspora members. And they are the African experts. So I rely upon them for specific knowledge. But I think, the thing is that we all have skills and things to add. And so my expertises lie in things like logistics and shipping and fundraising. And yeah, I have some knowledge of the African continent, but they are tied to the importance of achieving our mission, which is getting books to specific places and specific countries where they can help people.
Patrick, are there any other organizations, nonprofit, for profit? Let's just talk in general here. Is anybody else shipping more books to Africa than you guys?
We are the world's largest shipper of books to Africa and have been for 20 some years. So the answer is nobody sends more books to Africa than Books for Africa. Now, there used to be other organizations that did what we did. And what has happened is they have not been able to continue, largely because they relied too heavily on publisher overstock. And so there used to be, let's say 20 years ago, a lot of excess publisher stock. And so there were organizations that would work with publishers, collect those books, and send them. Books for Africa ran a completely different operation where we utilized used books, and we had a way of sorting books so that we could organize used books and sort out the ones that were not useful from the ones that are useful, and then organize them into categories, et cetera. So in some ways, we're like the last man standing because a lot of those other organizations have gone by the way, and we have continued to grow. And those other organizations that send books to Africa now, we actually subsidize a lot of them and have sort of created a consortium that draws on the strengths of other organizations that want to send books to Africa. So really, rather than competing with other organizations, we're able to partner with them. And so that's, I think, a way to add value. That's a way to maximize opportunities by working together with other organizations rather than trying to always compete. But it's a competitive world. There's always competition for NGO dollars. And so I think we have to always operate under the assumption that if we're not doing a good job, there are competing interests, competing organizations. So we better be doing a good job and adding value, or our donors and partners will find someone else who will do it.
Patrick Plonsky is my guest today from Books for Africa, right here on the Edge of Adventure. And it's always great to get the perspective of different leaders like yourself, Patrick. You mentioned partnerships, and let's go back to that thought a minute. Can you do this without strategic partners, without other people? I mean, this is a huge operation. And what would be the thought on partnerships, and are they needed, and how do you cultivate them?
I think partnerships are really essential to Books for Africa the way it's currently structured. Certainly, we could do it without partnerships, but we would be a much smaller operation, which with much less impact. So we find it very useful and advantageous to partner with other organizations. So some of those organizations are providing books, and Better World Books, for example, based in South Bend, Indiana, is our largest supplier of university books and library books. We partner with organizations like Follett, based out of Chicago, or Walker Bookstore, in Minnesota, which provides a lot of K-12 books. We partner with publishers to provide overstock like Learner publications or Capstone. And so we get books through a lot of partnerships. And then, for instance, we work with an organization in France that provides French language books for Francophone West Africa. So just to get books, look at all those partnerships. And then fundraising, all kinds of organizations that we partner with. Out of Print is one of our largest donors. Merck, providing funding for medical books. And so just a wide myriad of partnerships. In Atlanta, we work with Hands on Atlanta, which is sort of a clearinghouse for volunteers. So yes, we could survive without these partnerships, but we're always looking for new ones and advantageous ones that will help us to achieve our mission. I think there's an old adage that if you want to go far, you go travel with other people. And so we want to go far. The needs in Africa are huge, and they require the marshaling of vast resources. So that's our goal, is to coordinate a lot of resources. In some ways, I feel like I'm a conductor of an orchestra, not playing any instruments, because it's all about connecting resources at a variety of levels and partnerships.
Patrick, what is next for Books for Africa? You have a long history, a successful history. Things are going strong. I'm sure you've, like everybody in the last year and a half, you've come up against some challenges that weren't there prior to the way the world kind of shut down. But what's next for you guys? I mean, I know an organization as successful as Books for Africa is always thinking several steps ahead. Um, Thoughts on the next year or so for the organization?
Well, I hate to just say more of the same, because that sounds like we're resting on our laurels, or not being visionary. But our basic model remains solid. There's a huge demand for books across the continent of Africa. We provide them. We provide them at a very low cost. It adds values, and so there's still a lot of places. There's, I think, something like 1 billion children in Africa. And so all those kids need books. And so while we've sent a lot of books, the demand is huge. So on the basic level, we want to get more books to more kids in Africa. That said, we want to be cognizant of the changing dynamics and stay nimble. So we'll continue to provide digital books. We are exploring custom printing of books. If you print books in large enough quantities, it is possible to print a book for 50 cents or $1 or something. And so we can print those books in local languages, and that adds value. So custom printing, I think, is part of the puzzle for sending a lot of books to Africa. We just had a meeting in Atlanta with the African Union. So I think looking at partnerships on a continually growing scale, like the African Union, working with the Department of Defense to secure resources to send books, further collaborations with USAID, folks that have resources that we can tap into.
Patrick Plonsky of Books for Africa is my guest today here on The Edge of Adventure. Patrick, as we move toward the end of the program and our conversation today, I'm going to ask a simple question, but a big question. It's a big, important question. Are you making a difference? Is Books for Africa making a difference? And how would you paint that picture for someone who's getting to know you guys for the first time?
Books for Africa is definitely making a difference. If we were not adding value, we would not still be in business. Every nonprofit or for-profit entity needs to add value in order to stay in existence. Now, if we were getting funding from solely from a philanthropist, and we were just instructed to send books to Africa, and we sent them without needing to work with the recipients, I don't think we could make that boast. But since we are really a demand-driven organization, so the books that we send are asked for. The recipients oftentimes pay thousands of dollars to clear those containers, and then a lot of work involved in distributing those books. So simple supply and demand tells me we're adding value. Now, I would love to be able to finance an enormous study and measure literacy rates and show that the pre and post. And I did a lot of that work to get a degree at the University of Minnesota. That sort of analysis is very expensive. We do some of that. We do surveys of our recipients, and over the last 5 years, data has shown that the books are valuable and that they are deemed useful by our recipients. And so, in something like 15 countries every year, surveys come in. I wish I could get more data to prove more, but I think the cost of doing that, I don't know that it would change a lot. And so I think at some level, we have to look at the anecdotal evidence from all of the recipients who tell us, wow, these books are good, and 33 years of experience of sending books and our connections with our recipients. And it's the stories that we hear from the recipients always say the same thing. These books were very helpful. We're so happy to have them and have them available in our community.
Patrick, you mentioned all 55 countries in Africa. Okay, you guys have shipped books to all 55. Can you think of a couple areas where the location that these books were going were very remote?
Oh, absolutely. I remember traveling through Tanzania. We were traveling from Dodoma to Singita one time in these very rural areas, mud roads, huge holes, potholes I've never seen in my life. And I come from Minnesota. We've seen potholes, but one time we got stuck in the mud in the middle, and we were stuck there for a couple hours. Along with, there were like 3 or 4 other vehicles stuck in this enormous mud puddle. And the villagers, it was near our village, and the villagers came to watch us all try to push our vehicles out. It just struck me that, that this was a very remote place that I was. That's the way it is in many of the places that we work in, very remote areas. I remember one time I was in Zanzibar, and Zanzibar's a fairly touristed area. And, there's Stone Town there. And we visited a library right around the corner. It was right off the street from where all these tourists were traveling and tourists spending money. And it was this little tiny school with just a minuscule library, not many books. The ones they had were both very old and very tattered. And it struck me that here we were in a fairly populated area with, people with resources walking by all the time. And here was this little library that just needed so much help. So both the very urban areas and the very rural areas, I've seen a lot of need, and just glad that we can have something to offer and give some help to folks.
Patrick, final question. Favorite part of your job?
My favorite part is things like this, talking about books for Africa with different people. And I deal with a lot of different people in my job, a lot of variety. And so I might send an email. I may send emails in any given day to 10 countries, talk to someone like yourself, meet with my staff, talk to an individual book donor, then go to the warehouse and, somebody is maybe dropping off a a bag of books. And so the variety of the people that I work with is enormous because the different elements of achieving our mission require connections on so many levels. So I like the variety. I like that it's never boring, and there's an element of excitement to it. There's, of course, the knowledge that we're advancing global education in one of the poorest continents. The poorest continent in the world is Africa, with the people with the most need. And so I'm glad to be involved in this. And so it just it's what keeps me going every day, knowing that we're doing good, and knowing that I don't always know what the day will bring, but at the end of the day, even if it's been a trying day, at the end of the day, I can say, well, this has been a trying day, but hey, we just sent 20 tons of books to Ghana today. So we must be doing something right and achieving something.
Patrick Plonsky, we are thankful for you, for your leadership there at Books for Africa. And anybody that's watching or listening can find out more information. And you should. You should look them up at booksforafrica.org, booksforafrica.org. Find out how you can help. I do know a person or two in Atlanta. I've heard that there's quite a few good people that live there. And I know that I'm sure there's quite a few who come alongside you guys with the warehouse that you have here as well. So booksforafrica.org for more information. Find out how you can help. You can give to support them financially. You can also donate books, and I'm sure all sorts of things. So find out more at booksforafrica.org and let them know you heard about it here on The Edge of Adventure and that you appreciate the work they do, because it is making a big difference. I mean, when you think about all the books through all the years that they've gotten into the hands of kids and adults that might not otherwise have such a thing, and the difference that that kind of educational material makes. So again, Patrick, we're thankful for you, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me today on The Edge of Adventure.
Thank you, Adam. Pleasure to be here, and thank you to all your listeners. And we welcome support from everyone in any way they can provide it.
Thank you so much, Patrick. God bless you. We will talk again soon. And again, thank you for tuning in, everybody, for listening to the audio version or the video version. It's always great to have you. Thanks for being a part of the family. This is The Edge of Adventure. My name is Adam Asher, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, everyone.